Now, out of the blue, nobody planned this in advance. No political party organized this. No group of academics at a university department got together and said, hey, let's do Occupy Chicago. From a grassroots movement, it just emerged. A new tactic, which is not to plan something, hold the event, and then go home, but occupy and demand public attention be directed on the fundamental issues of social injustice in America. Now, I don't think anybody was prepared for something like that.
I believe that money is playing a bigger and bigger role in our politics, and it's just legalizing corruption, and it's something that we need to change.
I feel like a lot of people, including myself, have gone a really long time feeling hopeless, feeling powerless. And so when I saw, Occupy Wall Street, I saw a potential for there to be a national conversation about this and for people to really start coming out and cultivating power collectively, which is something that I haven't ever seen in my lifetime on this scale.
Societies like ours must reform the system or face devastation. And we're facing devastation.
If we go as we are going now, we're going in a very dark path that only means destruction and death for the whole planet.
People should be civically involved because the country is going through a transformation and people's living conditions and future is in jeopardy.
The more I began to study and read and explore various theoreticians, I had to read some of their works to understand what's really going on, the more kind of a mosaic of what's happening began to fall into place.
Creative disposition is to live in a non-human way, even though you are nevertheless still, of course, a human being.
When you have 90% of the economic growth in America in the last 30, 35 years has gone to little less than 10% of the population, you've got a systemic crisis on your hands. And more people are realizing correctly in the Occupy movements and elsewhere that the very foundations of American democracy are being undermined by this. And that's why this movement opens up a whole ability to discuss what is, I think, a deeper problem, which is a systemic underlying problem of the crisis of capitalism. I would say, however, that while it's good as a starting point to say, hey, look, 1% is making out like bandits, 99% is not, that's just a starting point of the discussion. Capitalism encounters the kind of problem it's facing today, which is an internal crisis of profitability. The system responds by engaging in austerity, pushing down living standards in order to accumulate more profit for capital. When capital finds its rate of profit is declining, the only way it can obtain the value that can allow it to reproduce itself on an ever-expanding scale is to take more and more value away from everyday people, remove it from the sphere of consumption, and deposit it back into the sphere of capital reproduction.
I definitely recognize that there are people who are not going to see this as something that's relevant to their lives or something that's going to improve their lives. To those people, I would engage them by asking them questions. What do they see the problems of this country?
In general, what's going to happen if people just take this passively is there's going to be a massive relocation of wealth from the average person to capital. And that's going to result in a severe restriction and reduction of living standards with no good to come out of it except profitability for those high income earners. And if that's the world we want to have, well then go for it. But this is not a world that's going to benefit the vast majority of Americans.
We need to be heard. It's only fair. So therefore, we are the 99%. We want to be heard. Keep those bakers out of time. Get it up.
Older people tend to have a tendency more or less to take things as they've been, well, that establishes the parameter of how they can be. The great thing about youth is you can look past the parameters of the given and say, well, why should we live with these expectations? Why shouldn't we go beyond them? So I think that the youth are very important in this, students are very important in this, both because they have the energy, they have the creativity, but they also have the idealism to question things that many people have ceased to question. We have to get involved, and encouraging people to get involved in this so that you can take the future into your own hands and say, no, we got to reverse the direction. We can try to chart a different path of development.
You have to participate. You have to participate in the democracy if you want it to work at all.
Not everyone is politically active, but that doesn't mean that they're not receptive.
The first thing is to have a critical mind to the standard narrative that you're being fed. People need to understand, one is to understand what an argument is and the difference between an argument and a series of assertions. If somebody presents you with a series of assertions, don't buy it, unless it's an argument that is both logical, that is valid, and one that is sound, that is based on truthful, accurate information. You should not, in any respect, be anything but skeptical or critical of it. Secondly, be willing to explore theories of liberation or other ways of looking at the world that seems to fall outside the accepted parameter of what you ought to read or ought to think about. Thinking is a form of activity, or as a great philosopher, Dunevskaya, once put it, the first act of liberation is to demand back your own head. And if you demand back your own head and think for yourself, then nobody can control what you're going to do afterwards.